That marketing game plan doesn't have to be huge on day one. Your marketing game plan can be as simple as just starting out with one or two things, but start with the low-hanging fruit. Start with the stuff that you know is going to work, which is obviously going to be reverse engineered from understanding your persona.
This goes far beyond marketing. There's a rule, basically, if you ever get seriously stuck about a business that you're trying to launch or run, or you're producing a product and it's just not quite working, you always go back to the customer. That is the ultimate fallback point. It's going to be where you're going to get the most honest truth, and maybe you made an assumption that wasn't correct.
Sure. You can put a price on unhappy owners. You can't maybe measure it exactly, but you can certainly see the results of it.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Challengtunity Podcast. I'm Chris Lawson. I'm one of your co-hosts. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host, Jordan Wolf, who is really secretive. Nobody knows his birthday other than the great people at Baskin-Robbins. So, Jordan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I just had all of the ice creams. So,
did you?
That's my top day.
So, we recorded this in February. Does that mean your birthday is in February?
No, it's not. But we'll leave that up to the audience to not look into. Yeah, it's been a fun week. Let's say that one.
It has been a fun year so far. I know at Atrium, we're flying. We have companies from all over the world looking at, challenging what they're doing every single day in their marketing mix. We've already been issuing podcasts. I think one launched earlier this month about sales and marketing alignment. And, we've had a lot of feedback already on that. It's just, everyone's just challenging the status quo. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, getting some feedback finally from some of those early episodes and seeing what people are into, how they're enjoying sections of the topics that we're covering, the way that we're covering it, and, learning to adopt this thing the way that the audience might best benefit from it and make the most value.
Well, we're so used to being so polished all the time in everything that we do. And I think for the first time in a long time, we've kind of just barreled into this and just in a lot of ways, we're talking about things we're very passionate about and very knowledgeable about, but we're definitely winging the podcast element. So I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I know how you feel about it because you've finally crumbled under the crushing weight of running an agency and doing a podcast with, let's just call it some lower back problems.
Yeah. Anybody who's listening who understands back pain will 100% relate with my story. I was walking down the stairs holding a bowl. My heel slipped. I flew through the air and landed on my lower back a week and a half ago. I fractured 3 lumbar in my lower back. So long story short, I've been working from home and been in a lot of pain. And my golden retriever puppy named Sean thinks it's fantastic because I'm around all the time, but he also doesn't understand I can't play with him every 5 seconds. So it's been interesting.
Exactly. Well, it's been fun watching you kind of squirm your way into meetings like this. I know it's still painful. So
yeah, I got a brace on, so it helps. Well, Jordan, we have a really cool episode lined up today. We're going to be talking a lot about what it's like entering into a marketing department or into a company that hasn't established anything. We're going to be talking about the human aspect of marketing and how important that is. And we got a pretty cool guest joining us. Colleen Valerio is an entrepreneur, a real estate agent, somebody who's been on multiple television shows for real estate, which is kind of cool. She's very knowledgeable in the world of marketing as she's been a marketing coordinator or VP of marketing for over 20 years. So and focusing on an international market. So she's going to be talking quite a bit about, just the lifeline of marketing, the department, and a whole bunch of other things. It's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited.
Yeah. She'll be joining us shortly, so I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into our first topic, which is, all about mixing it up day one. And, it's some of our audience, they relate more to the business leadership side of it. And then the other side of the group is kind of those marketing professionals. And I think the first topic is going to be really interesting for both, because if you're a business owner and you're trying to maybe scale your business, and maybe you're going to start taking marketing, and keep in mind that we're looking at it from the lens of digital marketing, and taking that a little bit more seriously, you're going to hire a marketing coordinator or somebody who you think is a unicorn. We talked about that previously. And that's going to be new. And then at the same time, you might be a marketing coordinator, and you might be coming into a business that hasn't established themselves yet. So, starting from nothing, Jordan, can be a really interesting thing.
Even when you're starting from something, you don't really know what's there. It's kind of like a mystery box when you're going into a new company. You've got, the company line, of course, they're going to say everything's peachy, or, there's lots of problems you need to focus on, but you don't really know for sure. I mean, there's a reason you're being brought into the position. It's maybe you're replacing somebody, but even if you are, the picture is never fully clear. And data is great and all. People's, marketing plans, et cetera, written plans are great, but they still won't tell the whole picture, because you really have to understand something, tip to toe, almost to the point of like, if you can teach it, then you really understand it, is kind of a common saying. That's true with when you're in a role. Like, getting yourself embedded in where you're starting from and getting a lay of the land is really job number one.
Kind of takes me back, actually, because I remember taking over a role. It was a role where I actually moved to another city, and the person who was in my chair, ironically, had never been let go yet. So literally, my first task as a new marketing coordinator was to let the person who I took over from, let him go. It was a horrible role. So sometimes stepping into a role can be intimidating. It can be scary. But I think the very first thing that you have to do whenever you're stepping into a new role is not to jump into anything too quickly. Suss out the scenario that you're in, look at the data, understand, what programs, if any, are running, are working, and what's not. Take time. Don't make radical decisions, because often those emotional or radical decisions are the ones that are going to lead to a little bit more failure.
Yeah, and there's a balancing act to this, because as much as the best long-term decision for you in any new position is to really get a position of oversight where you can see everything and you understand where everything goes and where everything's moving, but you also can't fall into analysis paralysis. Like, it's a new job, you need to stand out and impress, and there's going to be some short-term wins. I'm sure you're going to have to focus on a project or two, but don't also get lost in the day-to-day and the tasks that's right in front of you. It's really easy to put blinders on and focus, and then you miss all the important stuff to the side of you that's blowing by that should have been addressed much earlier. And next thing you know, it's 9 months later, 3 years later, and you've kind of missed the big important parts.
So what if you're starting with absolutely nothing? How many times, Jordan, have we seen marketing coordinators, or, they're also salespeople a lot of the time. More industrial brands usually do this, where they hire somebody to kind of be the jack of all trades, and they've never, ever put their foot in the marketing realm. Like the organization has never run ads. Maybe they've done, a website that hasn't been updated in 7 years. Like, what if you're starting from nothing? Like, what's the first step?
Yeah. So it depends on what role you're in and whether you have a team that you're going into or not. Right. So if it is a junior coordinator type position, then it's really just going to be you, and you're going to have to kind of piece it together yourself. If you're coming in more of like a marketing manager or team lead or VP type position, then you might have a team below you that has some established footprint, that are specializing in different areas. So data collection is always the first thing that I prefer to do. I'm more analytical. That's my preference. Sometimes it's just sitting down with those people that you're influencing on either end of marketing. So like we talked about in a previous episode, marketing sales alignment is really important. Marketing management alignment is really important. So having an understanding of where the inputs are coming from on the customer side, and the outputs, which are going to the company on the sales side, or right to management, or even operations, those types of connections are kind of your critical points with connecting to the business from your department or your role. So either start with the data and then work your way out to those points, or start from those points and work your way into the data.
Yeah, a lot of the time, the relationships that you have in that company haven't been established yet. But work with those individuals. Sit back, talk to them, find out what has worked in the past, what those heartaches have been. Talking to those people, a lot of the time you'll learn a lot more about your customer, about your product, about the market that you're in if you have no experience in it. Really leverage the relationships and the people around you and have them partner with you essentially to not just equip you, but release you into building out a marketing game plan. That marketing game plan doesn't have to be huge on day one. Your marketing game plan can be as simple as just starting out with one or two things, but start with the low-hanging fruit. Start with the stuff that is going to work, which is obviously going to be reverse engineered from understanding your persona, understanding where they live, understanding their problems, understanding the psychology behind them. So if they're, maybe it's not as simple as understanding, their problems as a business in a B2B scenario. Maybe it's more a B2C or direct consumer situation where you need to understand deep down what they're trying to solve for their business or in their life or for their children, or in their role as a business. Maybe they want all the credit, speak the language that they speak essentially, and reverse engineer it from the persona and from your strategy that you're implementing.
Yeah. And we're not really, we're trying to talk in generalities, but at the same time, every single dynamic for every single company you go into is going to be different. So like Chris said, depending on who's going to be benefiting from your role, who you're reporting to, you may be coming into a very strict environment where they have very strict expectations of what you're going to be doing for day 1, day 2, day 3. You might be going into a big consultancy firm where they've got here is the script that you follow for starting your job for the next, year. All of those things being true, you still, for your own benefit, want to do these things. Because even if you're in a really micromanaged or top-down situation where, your superior is telling you exactly what you need to do, if you start collecting these things and you start having this extra insight because of it, that's the best chance you have of getting the kind of confidence that you need from your management or from your superiors or even the people around you to get more flexibility and more freedom in that situation.
Yeah, and I love how we're kind of talking a bit about, really high level, because there is no game plan or playbook for people who are starting off in a scenario where, maybe you're starting with nothing, or maybe you're inheriting a mess. But I will say this, being as critical as you absolutely can be is going to be probably the mentality that's going to help you the most. We call it, at Atrium, we call it, an engineer's lens. Kind of peeling things back little by little, making iterative changes, not necessarily making emotional or radical, changes, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of all a part of that lens. We see this a lot with marketing. So let's relate it to maybe manufacturing or maybe a vehicle. So my car doesn't start in the morning. What do I do? Well, if I'm, perceiving it from how businesses look at marketing, I'm going to throw the car out. Get rid of the ad, get rid of the marketing department, get rid of the agency. It's not working. An engineer's approach is going to pop open the hood, tinker a little bit, isolate the problem. Maybe it's a spark plug, gone, right? Same thing applies with your ads. Maybe it's one little campaign, negative keywords, adjust part of the targeting. Maybe it's, you're not ranking properly. Maybe you got to do a little bit more keyword research and understand what that audience is actually searching with. It's small little changes that are actually going to make the change. So Jordan, that engineer's lens, we talk about it all the time, but it's something that, you live by every single day.
Yeah. We're constantly in a dynamic environment as marketers. So having a toolkit or a methodology that allows you to approach problems like that, fixing a car analogy, any car mechanic will be able to tell you, there's a rule of thumb. Maybe I'm not getting it exactly right, but it's fuel, electric, compression, spark, air. You check all of those things. Those are fundamentals. And the problem is probably going to be in one or more of those things. And if you can either remove the things that aren't problems and isolate down to the ones that are, that's going to be half the job done. If you know that, okay, it's not a creative problem, it's a targeting problem, then you can focus on that in your campaigns. Or if you know that it's a landing page problem, then, there's no point in spending time on the ad because it's getting good click-through rates, et cetera. So having the right understanding of the whole picture and then using those methodologies to kind of get down to the problem is how you can be both effective and efficient in your job, as well as it gives you that kind of full spectrum understanding of where your value is being placed for the rest of the organization.
So let's change gears a little bit. Let's move to the next segment, because it's one that I know for myself I'm really passionate about. I'm a people person. It doesn't matter if it's managing our staff, looking at corporate culture, whether I'm looking at it from the lens of a marketer. People matter, and whether we are talking business to business, B2B, B2C, direct to consumer, whatever you would like to call it, software sales. At the other end of your marketing, at the other end of your sales pipeline is an individual, a person. And I think it's really important that we understand the human aspect of marketing, that we understand the human aspect of everything that we're doing and how we're impacting people. You see this a lot when you're looking at data and analytics. A lot of SEO specialists, a lot of advertising specialists, they look at the data and they tweak things, and they might look at keywords, and they might do this and that. But if you're now looking at it from the perspective of this ad I'm running, I'm producing it because I'm actually helping somebody on the other end. They have a need, and we have a product or a service we're promoting that can legitimately help them. You can start getting into the individual's mindset a little bit more, and really start getting the feels. We don't like talking about the feels, because, it sounds emotional or, erratic. But the truth of the matter is really understanding the human aspect of what you're doing is going to only make those campaigns or whatever you're doing flourish that much more.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to be a human behavioral psychologist or anything like that, but, at least having those fun. Well, I guess we could. Yeah. It's a great place to start, but I'm certainly not. With the, common marketing tropes of a buyer's journey, for example, that's a good way to kind of give a framework to jump back into focusing on the person and understanding where they're coming from. Now, that particular toolkit, I've learned in my career, is not always a perfect fit for every situation. Your buyer's journey might be very different than the generic, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that they give in marketing textbooks. But just not knowing that that's a process that you should go through in order to understand those steps and where people are going at step 1 and step 2. I know you talk a lot about customers up front when we're working as an agency to understand how far they've gone down that road. What are some of the things you've found that clients have used themselves as ways to get that deeper understanding, or other situations where maybe they come in a little bit light on that fact?
It's usually light. Usually whenever we're talking to a business that's trying to solve something, it's because they don't know how to solve it. But what I do find a lot of the time is business owners, general managers, salespeople, they understand their audience extremely well, but it's not because of surveys or data analysis or anything other than handshakes, playing golf with them, doing 1 billion sales calls that help them understand who these individuals are at the ground level. But that comes back to understanding the human side of everything that we're doing. These individuals are the ones that have the personal relationships and rapport, because these are the individuals that at the end of the day are usually measured by the sales. And in order to make the sale, those individuals have to have a personal relationship. So I think we can take a lot from those individuals on the marketing side. I know a lot of the time when we start implementing these routines, we'll bring in those individuals into our discovery calls, right? But if they don't know, there's a lot of process and a lot of different techniques that you can use. Persona development is something that agencies have been using for years. Inbound marketing was not the creator of the persona. We talk about demographics and audiences for decades. That's a really good place to start, because you're not going to just understand who they are and how to target them. You're going to understand deeply what's going on inside of them. If they're sitting there calling agencies to try to find an agency to run their ads for them or to handle their social media, a lot of the time, deep down, they have some insecurities about job security, right? So as an agency, you're able to kind of address that and say, we need you. We can't do this without you, kind of thing. Or maybe you're a business owner and you're talking to an agency, or you're looking to hire a marketing coordinator, but you've been burned before. Understanding that individual and understanding, their fears and all that kind of stuff is really important. And same thing applies there when you're dealing with an audience you're marketing to or you're trying to do sales to. Understanding their fears, their anxieties, what they see as valuable will help you to be able to craft your tone and your messaging and your graphics and everything that you're producing for content accordingly.
And this goes far beyond marketing. There's a rule, basically, if you ever get seriously stuck about a business that you're trying to launch or run, or you're producing a product and it's just not quite working, you always go back to the customer. That is the ultimate fallback point. It's going to be where you're going to get the most honest truth. And maybe you made an assumption that wasn't correct. Maybe you had data, but it wasn't quite complete and you were responding to a signal and not the noise. Or maybe the needs of the customers changed and you need to respond to that with your product or your marketing or your business model. All of those things can be impacted by a deeper understanding of your customers.
Well, I mean, the reality of this whole marketing and sales, battle tied to business objectives is there is some tension, and there is, this push and pull that occurs. But if you're able to kind of work together, whether you're new there or you've been established and maybe you got a new marketing or a new salesperson, bring them under your wing, get everybody aligned, get on the same page. If together you aren't able to answer a lot of those core questions as to who that audience is, personas, research, surveys, I mean, seriously, OpenAI will tell you, ask questions. There's a lot that you can do to be able to get those answers.
Nice segue.
Nice segue.
Yeah. Yeah, we're supposed to, I think, disagree more often. I think that was one of the pieces of feedback. So, no.
Yes.
You're wrong.
All I know is my back hurts.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe we'll transition into the next phase here so we can take a little break for your back then.
That would be great. Well, what's cool is that, previously we had the opportunity to interview Colleen. She's got a lot of really interesting takes, given that she's been doing this for 20 years. So yeah, let's let the fading effect go over the video, and let's cut to the interview that we had with Colleen.
Awesome. All right, welcome back. We've got a guest with us today. Our guest, Colleen Valerio, is basically a veteran of 25 years working in the intersection between business development and marketing, largely in real estate, construction, and covering a time where we went from even billboard marketing all the way up to modern social media management and programmatic advertising. The past 15 years, though, she's spent as a recognizable TV personality in real estate in the Dominican Republic. So managed to escape the Canadian tundra and get down to the beaches and sunshine. So we'll maybe talk about how that's given some kind of a colorful element to that mix. But we welcome today Colleen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Excellent. So earlier, Chris and I have been talking quite a bit about, businesses that have jumped from, having either a team and then hiring someone new in, or just doing marketing for the first time. You've had a lot of experience through your career going into new businesses or starting something from scratch and having to deal with all those ins and outs. So maybe we'll cover some of that today as well. But welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's interesting to be here and talk about. It's hard to say I've had 25 years doing anything. That sort of dates me, but I certainly do remember doing mail outs and billboards and radio ads, and now it's a whole different world, of course. So yeah, I don't know what you'd like to know. My most recent time has been, I think, 7-8 years, besides having my real estate company, which I still do, and that's a whole different story, but certainly taking a large development without any marketing and starting from scratch and building it to a place where they're selling 110 houses a year and there's a large department and have watched such a big success in building a team. And it's been a ride, I'll tell you, especially in a foreign country trying to market to the world.
So what made you go from the Arctic, where clearly it's comfortable, to going to the Caribbean and selling real estate? I mean, was that a dream of yours, or was that it just happened? How did you get into that?
It started about 16 years ago with my husband saying, I want a winter home. I can't do this anymore. And we owned a mortgage brokerage in Alberta, and I did the marketing for that. And we got down there and it just progressed to starting to do real estate, which we had done here too as investing and things like that. And then starting a real estate company, which got to be very, very successful. And then one of the big developments down there said, please, just come in the office for a year. I need a marketing department set up.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, 7 years ago. So I've just done both. And it's grown from, a website and me to a 5 or 6 person marketing department that sells properties mostly to North Americans, but the setup from literally all the branding, the words, the feel, the design, the persona development, websites, social, ads, search marketing, all of it, to the big machine that it's become. And actually I've just stepped back, and it's a machine that almost just runs without me now based on what we've accomplished.
Wow. So you've really kind of jumped into something where there was nothing at all, which ironically, Jordan, we were talking about earlier, and we'll probably be covering a little bit later as well. And now you're stepping back. I mean, how do you get from point A to point B? I mean, is that a strategy? Is that a plan? Is it something that you go with the flow? How do you get there? I mean, how do you start?
Especially for our audience, having a perspective outside of a particular situation, like they may be stepping into any company. Like maybe there's some lessons they can learn, broadly speaking.
Yeah.
Well, I've always said to the staff that I have, they get tired of hearing it. I always say, what happens if I get hit by a bus? That's always been my statement. You're training yourself.
Why does everyone say that? Like, how many buses are out there to get us? I mean, that's...
Well, they drive like crazy people in the Dominican. So getting hit by a bus, a Caribbean tour bus, is an actual possibility. But I always say to myself, if something happened to me or I step back, I need people in place that can keep that machine rolling. And so we've done it by different philosophies. I mean, we have a lot in-house. We do, it was me. I just happened to do all the artwork and the web, and all of that was always me. But I mean, we do a lot of content in-house with YouTube has been one of our best vehicles for sales, obviously. So we have an in-house YouTube content. I was going to say group. We have one person that does it. This poor girl is a genius. But we've outsourced a lot of stuff as well. So we don't want to, in a country like that, be dependent on in-house teams as much as we can. We try to outsource where and when we can. A lot of on-the-ground services, because not only do we do marketing, but we also service an owner group over there of I think it's over 350 owners. So it's events, it's services, it's community marketing. It's not just bringing in people from out of the country. It's servicing the people that we have that have already purchased. So, we talk in marketing about the flywheel. It's always keeping it spinning and keeping people part of our world. So I guess for me, I've just always made it so that if I leave, it will keep going, and have trained people to come behind me to look after those areas. Can they do it all? No. I don't want to do myself out of the job completely, but I do think surrounding yourself with the smartest of the smart people that can pivot and learn and can pick up and multitask is really, really important.
So, I mean, at the heart of, the beginning of the journey, it was all about bringing expats, people from around the world, down to the Dominican to, live their dream of owning property in a democratic, very warm, sunny, place. Mm-hmm. How have you guys over time been able to bring people down there? Was there a certain marketing channel or a group of, or did you build out a marketing mix? I mean, what was that secret sauce that you guys have kind of been riding?
Well, because it's not, you're not selling a primary residence to somebody in their hometown, right? It's a completely different type of real estate, and that goes for my real estate company as well as what I did for the developer. You are selling a lifestyle, and you have to, first rule of marketing, what problem are you solving for your buyer? Well, for us, it's cold, it's this, there's a number of things, but it was meeting buyers where they were and speaking to them in a way that they understood, and becoming that, like you guys always talk about being a thought leader. I guess that's what we've done for years, is meet them where they are and give them the information they want. We didn't sell them anything. We offered them a lifestyle and removed all the barriers for them to get it, and gave them truthful and honest information so that when they came, Nothing was a big surprise. They already felt, Vicky that works for me in my real estate company always says that she wants people to be armed and dangerous before they ever get there. So we have given them so much information that by the time they get there, they trust us. We build trust first and relationship second, and then follow through, do what we say we're going to do and provide service that doesn't end. So, and introduce them to other people. We give them a lifestyle that really nobody else ever does. And that has been the secret sauce. But how do you get that? You don't get that by looking at a YouTube video. Well, you do to an extent, but certainly not answering a Google ad. It's about the service and the information that we send them. So we do it through automations, we do it through workflows, all that stuff.
We talked earlier actually about the kind of challenge that a lot of marketers face when they're hired into a position or they're coming into someone else's system of, their marketing mix or the things they've established, where quite often if you're, especially in a top-down situation where a lot of the guidance is coming from your superior, you may be tasked with doing a very specific thing, like fix the YouTube or do the social media management. But it sounds like if you were in that position and you were just doing that, you would have missed this bigger picture because that whole system needs to be built, right? Just doing one of those things doesn't really map up.
I think it comes back to really, first of all, understanding business in general, what it's going to take, and looking at the whole operation as a whole, and being, it's that 50,000 foot view that you really, as a marketing manager, need to understand. Marketing tends often to work in silos, right? I'm a content writer, I'm a graphics, I'm a this, I'm a that. And even if you have those people under you and you don't know how to do them yourself, there's not a hope that I'm going to ever know how to manage every Google ad. I have people that do that, you guys actually, that do that for us because you do such a great job of it. But that's what you have your specializations. And I think the smart marketing manager knows where to go for those things and to make sure that all of your bases are covered. You can't fix, if one part of your business is broken, you've got other broken parts too. And you need to look at it as a whole, and your complete messaging system has to be consistent and the same. And then it doesn't go from just marketing. Then you got to look at your sales department and what are they saying and how are they messaging, and are they able to, it's great you can drive 1 million leads, but if it dies a slow death when it gets to sales, you have a different problem. So I think, honestly, it's putting good people with you and taking your ego out of the equation. I always say, if you want to be a boss, you should never be one, because my job as a boss is to service the people that work for me and make sure they have the tools and resources to do their job and my support.
Well said.
And I think that's been the success that I've had. And honestly, not thinking you know everything, because it's a terrifying being a marketing director now. There's so much to know. It changes all the time. You can feel like a dinosaur in about a week and a half. So it's just recognizing where you're weak and filling those gaps too.
I love how you mentioned a moment ago that a real true marketer today understands their business that they're in, because if you went back a number of years ago, it was as simple as the marketing coordinator, having to do things like create the annual report, right? But nowadays you have to understand the sales cycle. You have to understand, who those audiences are inside and out, and equip your sales team and implement marketing automations that are triggering tasks and triggering marketing emails and hitting people, whether they're in the awareness, consideration, decision-making phases of the buyer's journey, or are they past the marketing phase? Are we now servicing them? And, I think the average marketer sometimes misses the fact that if they don't really grasp the business that they're in, they're never going to properly be able to service the client throughout the entire funnel. I think, listening to how you've been talking a lot about your role in the Dominican Republic, first of all, how long is your buyer's cycle? Is it a month? Is it years?
It can be as simple as somebody comes to us and says and books a flight and comes in 2 weeks and buys a property, or I have seen clients that take 4 or 5 years to buy. So
wow.
You know what? It's not like my refrigerator died, I need to get one. I'll do some research and see what the reviews are. It's not like that. It can be a long nurturing cycle. And the other thing that I was going to mention is about it's fun to play with all the toys we get as marketers, right?
Yes, it
But
is.
it's knowing when to stop. It's knowing when to stop using the toys and to pick up the phone. It's when to know where you reach them in their buying cycle. Putting them in a large workflow, or the sales department putting them in a big sequence, you're missing the boat sometimes, because really what they wanted was that personal touch. So it's the emotional intelligence to really understand your buyer, and when to be pushy and when to not. And it's really about service, and it's about recognizing that clients are people, and never forget that. And you're there to build relationships. So, to answer your question, Chris, it's knowing your buying cycle can be 2 weeks, or it can be, I've had clients that took 4 or 5 years to buy,
Wow.
and then what do? Then you're nurturing them, you're putting them in a drip cycle, you're, and then it's segmentation, right? It's like, well, they were interested in this and these people are interested in that, so I'm not going to send them the wrong stuff, and I'm not going to send them a wrong price point. I'm going to ask them, how you doing? We did things just as simple as, it wasn't even me, it was actually one of our salespeople that did this during COVID. She just sent out an email to all of the people in her database just saying, how are you doing? And I couldn't believe the response she got. I mean, just a simple thing like that I'm ashamed I never thought of. She did. But you know what? It went a long way for people just to feel cared about.
The human aspect of marketing.
Right, exactly. And for us, you got to remember, during COVID, they shut the airport down. We had no flights. We were dead in the water for over a year and a half. So then what do, right? How do you keep those people interested? And so we're a bit of a different mix down there for sure. But I think a lot of it can be applied no matter what you're marketing where.
We have a really unique lens, being a marketing agency, because, when you work with a company for 5, 6, 7 years, you end up seeing people come and go on the client side.
Right.
And, you're talking about a sales cycle that has lasted 3, 4, 5 years. Sometimes that sales cycle is longer than the sales manager or the marketing coordinator lasts at that business. So I think it's really interesting that, you're setting up these systems in place that you could almost take a step back and it works on its own, so that even if you were not there anymore, it's still servicing the clients, right? It's taking care of the business at the end of the day. You talked a bit about, actually, you've mentioned many times about the people that you work with. I'd love to kind of get your take on, utilizing people and their skill sets, and, how does mentorship, as a manager or as a VP or a CEO, come into play there?
Well, I guess I have the benefit of being old now, which is nice. But, it is really important to be a mentor. And it's not just, not just be a mentor, but recognize that the people that are coming up underneath you have a different education, different experiences. And I learned so much from them as well. So it's really a teamwork kind of situation that I think is so important. And, at the end of the day, it's me that has to make a decision, but I'm certainly going to say, hey, what do you guys think about this or that, or why? Why do you think that? And, and it's sometimes just as simple as they'll come to me with an idea and I'll say, make me a business case. I don't hear a business case here. How is this going to make money? Who was this, like, getting them thinking? And I think that's been a real, for me, that's given me a lot of, I don't know what the word is, just a good feeling to watch them go, oh yeah, I never thought of that, But watching them over the years grow and develop. So now I hear them who have staff going, I don't know, I don't hear a business case here. How is it, so it's neat to watch the growth of people, and to send them to school and send them to invest in them, and to watch them grow. And not because, so many companies are afraid to invest in their staff because they're going to leave. Why would I spend all this money on you? You're going to get a better job somewhere else. I think that's a very poor way of looking at it. The more I invest in you and your loyalty is there, the more you're going to want to stay, especially if you're growing and you're learning. And that's been kind of my methodology of keeping a loyal staff and a happy staff. And I think also being a mentor is investing in them personally. I just was in Canada. I can't tell you how much money to fly to the DR for 2 weeks to go to a wedding for one of my staff, because it was important to me to be there for her special day, and I'm back and forth a lot more than I used to be, but it's that type of investment, and I know everyone can't do that, or maybe big companies don't have that ability, but I used to work in one of the biggest construction companies in Canada. And I'll tell you, the way they invested in their staff, it was unbelievable. And their loyalty and retention rates were crazy because why would they go anywhere else? They were so well treated.
So you've talked a bit about, what it's like to come into an organization where there is nothing. You've talked extensively about how to, continue that growth and maintain it. Have you ever been maybe I shouldn't ask this, but have you ever been in a situation where you've had to leave what's been established, and and if so, or if you know anybody, what is that transition like? I mean, how do you just abandon this engine that you've built?
Well, it's actually interesting you ask, because I am getting to be kind of at a semi-retired stage. I'm just going to keep the real estate company, so I am stepping back from this large developer that I've worked for so long, and I'm in the middle, literally right now, of that handoff. And it's challenging if you have an upper level management that is newer and doesn't understand marketing as a whole. Is a big challenge for me right now, and they're not sure. They don't really know what we do, so trying to replace me is difficult, and then also trying to align the staff. And it's challenging because you've got people counting on you. This is a people business. I care about the staff and what their jobs are going to be like. So I'm just I've given them a very structured roadmap and options and choices of ways that they could go in the future. What they do with that is up to them, but I'm just leaving them as well set possibly as I possibly can, so that the machine keeps running and that the business keeps growing.
I think
that's
the machine word
documentation.
is the machine thing's a really big concept for us, like making a product out of the business model or out of the marketing system to make an engine that works. Then
Right.
that the inputs are, you put fuel here, you put the energy here, you get an output. That's a really critical thing these days.
Well, and there's things that you can do that. Numbers don't lie, but there's all of the variables that you can't necessarily measure, and what's important and what's not. And really having, CEOs understand the value of things that to them don't maybe, maybe there is no business case as far as they're concerned, but you can't, you can't put a price on. Well, actually, you can put a price on bad social. You can put a price on bad reviews. You can put a price on unhappy owners. You can't maybe measure it exactly, but you can certainly see the results of it. So trying to just keep the processes and systems going and making sure that they stay in place is my big goal, and to give them a literal roadmap, like do this, try that, go here, next that, is been what I'm leaving as, because it's a legacy, for me to leave as well. So I want to make sure it stays in good shape,
Yeah, one of the most important things for us when we have business owners or executives who don't really understand the value of marketing is taking those objectives that they have at their core. It could be high-level objectives for the corporation. It could be department objectives. And tying those to specific KPIs within your social programs, within search marketing, within your ads, within those campaigns, and really ensuring that they understand that those KPIs that you've set up is how you truly measure, so that they're not chasing vanity metrics, so that they're not running around with their head cut off being like, well, I've downloaded this on all these different phones and I've done this and that, and they're freaking out trying to figure it out on their own. Setting, I find, executives who are a little oblivious to marketing on the straight and narrow is essential, really, when it comes to getting your department the funding that you actually need every single quarter.
Right. Well, and as a marketing manager, if I was just, give advice to sort of a mid-sized company that's just growing their marketing and trying to get buy-in from the top, having a company or an agency that you could come alongside and explain that stuff with numbers, with wisdom that is explainable in a way that they understand. We can throw out big words all the time, but they don't mean anything. I don't want to have my doctor tell me what my prescription is in the Latin. I want to know what it's going to do for me. And I think that's what marketing people need to do too, is say, look, if we try this is what's going to happen. It might change. We might have to pivot and go there, but this is the end goal, and here's how we're going to get there, and here's why. Then that's worked for me. Every time? No. And have I been wrong sometimes? Yeah. But at the end of the day, if you look at the overarching time in and the amount of money, honestly, that's been made, it's been very, very successful.
Well, I have to say, as we kind of come to the end of our time here, it's been an absolute pleasure because, it's not every day that we talk to somebody who has kind of been at every different stage of being a marketing coordinator or at different levels of businesses, whether they be national or international or even mom and pop shop, let alone, direct to consumer, B2B, like you've kind of been able to kind of see it all. And so, I want to say thank you for your time today. And, you're approaching retirement. What are you going to do with all your extra time? Go to the Caribbean?
Well,
like what does one do when they've been working in the Caribbean and they retire? They go to Scandinavia? Where do they go?
Well, the real estate company I own, the staff there are like, are you ever going to come do our marketing properly? So I guess that'll be my first thing is to start doing that. And I'm also renovating 2 houses, so that should keep me busy. So, because somehow I think I'm 30. I don't know how that happened, but anyway.
Well, Colleen, thank you so much for your time today. We really do appreciate it, and I think our listeners are gonna love the feedback you have. We'd love to have you back on sometime if you're willing, and
I'm not
go from there.
painting something. I'll be back. You bet. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Cheers.
Take care, you guys. Bye.